everybody, what's up and welcome to episode 64 of Into the Necrosphere. I am joined today by a living legend, the man known as Johnny Kelly, drummer for Typo Negative, Danzig, a host of other bands, but those two really are the ones that are nearest and dearest to my heart. And if you like either of them, you are definitely not going to want to miss the next hour and a half. We went deep on both, and Johnny was just such a great guy and an absolute pleasure to talk to, so I think you guys are thoroughly going to enjoy this conversation. Before we get to that, however, Trivax are a band who hail from the UK by way of Tehran. They have recently put out their first recorded material for, I believe, 4 years. The track is called Into the Void. It is available right now on Bandcamp, and it is my demo of the week. That was Into the Void by Trivax. It is available right now on Bandcamp, and it is my demo of the week. Head over there and show them some love and support. They've got their debut record on there as well, which came out back in 2016, and it's also great. Inexplicably, these guys are unsigned, hence being my demo of the week, but it doesn't really matter because they've now enjoyed the greatest accolade that you could possibly receive in music, which is a spotlight on Into the Necrosphere. And if you want to be lavished with the warm, rosy glow of that same spotlight, then send me your best work to intothenecrosphere@gmail.com. And if I like what I hear, I will feature it on the show, and I might even invite you to be or to come on as a guest. Speaking of which, Cheyenne from Trivax will definitely be coming on in the next couple of weeks. Very interesting cat with a very fascinating story to tell. So he's going to be coming on. Look out for that. Possibly next week. Just depends on how on our schedules line up. Also, if you don't follow the show yet on social media, please do. On Twitter, it's at iNecrosphere. At Instagram, on Instagram and Facebook, it is at Into the Necrosphere. Also, if you're new to the podcast, you can check it out on YouTube, Stitcher, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. So however it is that you choose to consume your 2 to 2.5 hours worth of childish conversation, black metal talk, and swearing, you've got your pick of the bunch. All I ask is that wherever and however you choose to consume it, please do give the show a like, subscribe, leave a review if you can, comment, share, and the more of you that do that, the easier it starts getting for me to get guests on. I'm actually going to talk about that a little bit later on again in the news section that's coming on at the back end of the show. If you've never stuck around for any of those, basically I flip on Metal Storm and a couple of other metal news sites, and I give my opinions on some of the headlines. I've got a few bones to pick with people this week, so if you stick around for the end, you're going to catch a spicy conversation, that's for sure. Also, stick around after the conversation with Johnny, because I'm going to be launching my unsung classics segment. I mentioned it over the Christmas holidays. This week's selection is an absolute beast of a record that hails back to 1992. If you followed my Death Metal Countdown series, I think you might have an inkling about who I'm talking about, but I'll save the surprise for later on. In the meantime, please put your grubby little mitts together for a living legend, one of my favorite drummers of all time, Mr. Johnny Kelly.
I have the subscription also.
Yeah. I started using Zoom way back when I started this podcast, and it was a fucking nightmare to get anybody to use it because everyone was like, what the hell is that? Why can't you use Skype? And that's kind of a silver lining with this coronavirus bullshit, is that more people have started using it, so it's becoming a lot easier to get people to do interviews on them.
Pardon my ignorance. I only found out about it because of the lockdown.
Well, I think a lot of people did. I mean, their shares went through the roof. Yeah, well, like I said, I mean, their shares fucking skyrocketed thanks to the lockdown. So if you were an early investor in Zoom, you're probably putting down a deposit on the Lamborghini right now. But Johnny, again, thanks very much for taking the time to talk to me. And I think probably the best place to start is just to kind of check in and see how you've been doing. You're a guy who over the years has been a bit of a road dog as far as being out on tour with various bands is concerned. This must be like the last 9 months must feel quite surreal to you, being at home probably for as long as you've been.
I haven't been home for this amount of time since I don't know when. It really has been, now I'm home for just about a year.
Yeah.
And it's strange.
I can imagine. I mean,
my wife threatened to divorce me, I think, like twice. So it's not too bad.
That was something that actually came up. I don't know whether it's been a thing in the US. I would imagine that it is, but it came up here in the UK that divorce has gone up by something like 60% or something ever since
I
the
know.
lockdown, or relationship breakups have increased because people are in each other's face so much.
Well, yeah, you're certainly going to learn about somebody when you're around them 24/7 for months on end.
Yeah.
Something's, like you're going to know what you signed up for.
Yeah, I would imagine, especially in your case, where, like I said, you're kind of on the road all the time, and I mean, you've pretty much consistently been on the road since like the early mid 90s.
Yeah, pretty much. There's been times where we were home, for extended amounts of time, like when we were working, Typo was working on records and stuff, but never, I wouldn't say never, like, without any shows for like a year.
Yeah,
I mean, I did a couple of shows this summer with Quiet Riot, and I did one with Hookers and Blow. And even those were like, just like go out of town, do the show, fly home.
yeah,
I was in California uh, in the early fall to work on doing some pre-production for the new Kill Devil Hill record.
yeah,
And then I went back to California in like a month later in like mid-August, and I was out there for like a week.
yeah, yeah.
Other than that, I've been home.
And is that what has inspired you to take up the home arts and crafts that I've seen on Facebook, where you're doing the
Now,
drum covers and stuff like that?
with that. I've always been, I've always done stuff like, now that we have the house, I've been doing stuff around the house. I used to be an auto mechanic, so I'm always working on cars. I haven't had my car around in a few years. It's been in another part of the country. It's been in New Hampshire, getting body and paint for a few years, so I haven't had a chance to work on that. But yeah, I have a lot of tools, and now I have a lot of time. so,
Yeah.
but I've always kept busy with some kind of projects like that, whether it was cars, drums, building computers, working on my house.
Yeah. And you're
Yeah,
you're based down in Texas, right?
yeah, yeah. I moved down here about 3.5 years ago. In May, it'll be 4 years.
And remind me, where did you move down from?
I was living in New Jersey, for. I moved to New Jersey right after Peter died.
Yeah.
I moved from Staten Island, moved from New York, and then yeah. So I've been out of New York now, like 10 years.
And how many times this year have you stopped and said, "Thank fuck I don't live in New Jersey"?
You damn it!
You
You just froze up.
Oh, sorry. I don't know if it's the internet on my side. What my question was,
It
how many
said,
times this year
moment.
have you stopped and said, "Thank God I don't live in New Jersey anymore"?
From the minute I moved.
So it's not just coronavirus that made you
Oh,
grateful.
no. Well, actually, the reason we moved was my wife has fibromyalgia,
Okay.
so the winters are tough on her.
Yeah.
So once my stepdaughter finished high school, she was like, I'm out of here.
What
You can
is
come
that?
if you want.
I don't I've never heard of that before.
Fibromyalgia. It's a condition that affects your nervous system, where often it feels like you're in constant pain.
Yeah.
And she has that along with rheumatoid arthritis. So the treatment is kind of similar, like, the medications and stuff like that. So she'll have like, just out of nowhere one day, she'll have like a flare up in her shoulder, and she
Yeah.
can't move it, or like, like in her hip, or like, it affects. So most of the time, like, the RA affects the joints. Sometimes she'll show me like, she'll have a flare up, and it'll just be like, in some like random spot on her hand, and she's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I can't use it.
And so
And cold weather affects that.
yeah.
So once Anya was finished with high school, she was like, I want to move somewhere warmer. And then she got a job down here, and that was it.
And she said, "It's you can come or you can stay."
Yeah, well, the way that she put it to me, to like, like to soften the blow, she was like, we'll try it for a year and see how it goes. And I was like, all right, fair enough. I mean, I'd be a total asshole if I was like, to deny her because she's in physical pain.
Yeah,
Say
yeah,
no,
yeah.
you have to stay here. That would make me, douchebag of the year.
Yeah.
So, so we tried it. I wound up loving it, and I was like, I'm thankful that that it happened.
Yeah. So, I mean, kind of as
Family here,
as someone who's done it, what is the, because I obviously I mean I live in the UK. I grew up in South Africa. I've never been to Texas. I love Texas barbecue enough to where I know I'd love visiting the state. What is the appeal for so many people to be leaving California, New York, etc.? Just from a, I mean, you can say what
so that you're hearing on the news about people leaving and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
There isn't any state income tax here.
Yeah.
It's a low tax state, so it's it's business friendly because of the lower taxes, and there aren't as many. To me, it just seems like it's just a freer place.
Yeah.
It seems like, just from what I've experienced, everybody's nice here. I don't walk into 7-Eleven and feel like a suspect.
Yeah.
They wave at you when they say hello. It seems like everybody's New York, up, back up north.
Yeah.
Back, yeah. How they refer to it.
Yeah.
I get called a Yank down here often.
You don't have a very strong Staten Island accent, though.
A few drinks, it comes out.
All right. Okay. All right. But I mean, like, as you say, folks there are pretty accepting, and have you embraced the culture?
It seems to be the case because a lot of people are moving here now, so that means a lot of people from all different parts of the country, different parts of the world. There's lots of immigrants here and stuff.
Yeah.
So there is a good mixture of everything, but it just seems like it works.
Yeah.
I just hope that those the people that move, the people that do come to Texas, leave there, remember why they're leaving.
Well, is there, I can't remember if it's outside of Dallas or outside of Houston, there's a big billboard and it says, "Welcome all Californians. Please remember why you left California in the first place."
Well, it's very scary, because a lot of people are leaving because these places aren't working out for them.
Yeah.
And then, they'll be like, oh, well, then there's always the threat of, them taking their beliefs and then changing the place where they live.
Yeah.
This place should be more like this. It should be more like that. And then it winds up to be an annex of like these other cities, other states. And it's like, well, why did you leave?
Yeah. People from San Francisco moving and going,
there's
it would be nice in Houston, a few more homeless people. That's what make me feel comfortable.
I mean, everywhere, right? Every place has homeless people and stuff. So, like some cities have it more than others. So, like since I moved, I've noticed an incredible increase in homelessness in New York. Because I go up to New York frequently. I still have family there and stuff, and I have work there, and so I've seen the difference in the last few years, and it's unbelievable. Like, it's starting to me, it seems like it's starting to go back to the way New York City was when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I used to go there when I'd go into the city as a teenager. 42nd Street hasn't completely gone back to what it used to be, but it just seems like, like there's things are just becoming more lax. There isn't it just doesn't seem that that it's, what's the word? I don't know. Like the police really aren't doing their job.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of things that have been decriminalized and stuff, like all those quality of life things that, mayors in the past, like Mayor Bloomberg and Mayor Giuliani and stuff, where they would they were going after like all these like low level crimes to clean up the places, and now all that stuff got rolled back.
Yeah. Yeah. And
I don't understand why, it's like, what are you trying to create?
Yeah, no, exactly. I've often looked at, some of the folks that are, in these, riots and in these protests, especially the Antifa types and stuff. And you look at the way they carry themselves, and you go, does that person actually seem happy to you? Do they seem like they're in a good place in their lives? Like they've got a, stable job, stable income, and maybe they're just a little discontent with a few things in society, but do they look like they are well-adjusted, stable, happy human beings?
I see what you're saying. I mean, but there are radicals on both sides of everything.
Oh yeah, no, for sure.
People that take it to the extreme that make it that it seems like that make it worse for everybody that's in the middle.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, and it's
a lot of common sense things that I think people on both sides could definitely agree on.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think the tragedy right now in America is that I think it's very similar to where I came from. There is a huge center and these fringe groups on either side that have the loudest voices, but actually you kind of just wish the center would just turn to them and go, shut the fuck up and let us live our lives in peace.
It seems so simple.
Yeah.
Simple.
I was about to say, not so much with social media, but I know what you mean though.
Social media is the downfall of humanity.
Yeah, I totally agree. But if we focus on the positive, I wanted to start with something that is an observation of mine. So obviously, I got to know you, as most folks did, through Typo Negative. I've been a Typo Negative fan probably since I was 13, 14 years old. I was fortunate enough to see you guys when you played at the Astoria, one of the last shows I think that was ever held at the Astoria, when you were touring Dead Again. And it was a fantastic show, but my best Typo Negative memory is actually of you and Kenny being on stage very shortly after Pete passed away. Seventh Void supported Monster Magnet in, I think it was the Electric Ballroom in London. Okay. And there was this moment where I was standing right at the front, and I can't remember what Seventh Void track you guys played, but right at the end, you went into the chorus to World Coming Down. And, you could see Kenny was really emotional about it, but I looked over at you and you had this beaming smile on your face. Like literally you were in the happiest place that any human being could possibly be in. I don't know if you dropped a couple of tabs of ecstasy beforehand or there was a reason to that, but on a serious note, I was so touched by it because it was like the way that Johnny is looking right now is exactly the way that I feel when I listen to Typo Negative's music. And I have no shame in saying this. I was one of the only shows that I've ever become quite a little bit emotional watching that happen, and also because that song means so much to me. But like I said, seeing you there was just it's my favorite ever Typo Negative memory.
It was. I mean, it was cool way, because. Like very special to me personally. I'm losing my internet connection again.
Yeah, we broke up there for a second.
It was just kind of strange, to be, Peter's passing, because when Peter passed away, you really weren't sure what was going to happen with your life. Like speaking for myself, I wasn't sure where I was going, what I was doing, what was for me, what was going to happen. I mean, I was still playing with Danzig, but it was cool to be able to, in that way, like, pay tribute to the legacy of, that Peter, created. And it was, it was nice to be able to celebrate that moment, like in our live show. Like, to take a minute and, give a nod to Peter and, the people that were, that had been following the band for years that were there to, to see me and Kenny. And, it was just always special. It was the only time we ever did it.
Yeah.
Like on that tour, we were doing that. And after that, we never really played anything.
Yeah. No, as I said, absolutely one of my favorite memories ever of any show. But, as far as Typo Negative is concerned, as huge of a fan as I am of you guys, and, it was awesome seeing you live. But that moment to me there was just something so special about it. And I think part of it is being in the front. But equally, I'm also a very big fan, and I have for a long time been a huge fan of your drumming style. And I was very keen to understand. So if we start with where it really kind of stood out to me, like seeing you play either Typo Negative or Danzig songs live, you seem to kind of have such a strong signature in the way that you play, where like if I could hear it from, I could be, 100 yards away, and if I hear it, I probably have an inkling that's Johnny playing. It's like a certain kind of a groove, or you sort of speed things up a little bit. Where does your drum style come from? What were your, how did your drum style evolve as you kind of progressed as a musician?
Really, as a kid, I was my father raised me on the Stones and the Beatles, a lot of British invasion stuff. And then as I got a little bit older, yeah, I got into Kiss, and Kiss was, the game changer for me. And then from there, it went to like the other classics, like Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath, and that was that was the stuff that I was really passionate about. And then I started getting into like heavy metal. It started from stuff like that. Uh, you know, uh, like when I got into high school and I was starting to meet different kids, and developing friendships with different people that were outside of my microcosm in my neighborhood, where it was like, yeah, check this band out, check this, check out Saxon, check out, uh, I remember like waiting for Bark at the Moon to come out. I was like 15 years old. And a friend of mine at school was like, yeah, you got to check out this band, Motley Crue. It's like, you got to go buy the record. I was like, I only have money to buy Ozzy's record. And it comes out. He's like, you have to go to the record store after school and buy Shout at the Devil. He goes, if you don't like it, I'll give you the money and you can go buy the Ozzy record. And there was a record store like right around the corner from my high school. So a lot of times, after school, I'd stop at the record store and whatever, look around and buy something and then go home and listen to it. I went home. I went to the store, bought Shout at the Devil, brought it home, and it changed everything.
Yeah.
Holy shit. And there was I'm trying to think of other bands that I was really into. I remember really being into Saxon, being into like, what else? Like Accept and Queensryche and Iron Maiden, Judas Priest. Judas Priest is one of my favorite bands. And still, and then starting to get into things, like things like Merciful Fate and Overkill and that band Exciter, Venom and Celtic Frost, like
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. We started doing that, and then after that, like discovering Slayer and Exodus, and like Metallica was the big one. That one had a really lasting impression on me. And then from there, I started getting back into, it's like Guns N' Roses, Appetite for Destruction was like one of those records that was a game changer for me.
Yeah.
And then I started getting more back into, rediscovering my roots, rediscovering, my father's Stones records and Beatles records and stuff, and started going back into the classics. And then I got stuck in the classics, and I was, and that through all that time, I was playing in different bands that would have these different styles of music. Even when I was younger, I played in a band that was more like, glammy, and while I was playing in a thrash band, and then playing in a Sabbath type band and stuff, and playing in cover bands, and you just playing kind of like what I do now, but I was doing it at like 16, 17 years old. And so there would always be like these little things that I would pick and grab from that, that I would, use I would apply it to the way that I play. Let me try doing this. Let me try doing that. And, a lot of times, a lot of it was like the classic rock. I kind of lean on is like when I work with Glenn, there's the three drummers that I try to draw from all the time. And it's, John Bonham, Bill Ward, and Phil Rudd from AC/DC. Because Phil Rudd is definitely the less is more type of player.
Yeah.
And and he's perfect for AC/DC. So I was always trying to be perfect for whatever I was playing, not to try to be, like a great Johnny Kelly, or to try to be the best drummer ever. It's like, I wanted to make great songs. I wanted to be the drummer in a band that made great songs. And that was, so then I started developing, and it wasn't, it wasn't by design. It was just, this is how the shit happened. And it wind up becoming more of like a pocket player. And,
Mm.
so trying to like, like the little things that go into like, making a song cool or whatever, as opposed to like, having like some like weird, odd timing, syncopated things like that never would have worked in typo. And that's, spent so many years in typo, that was, became my thing. The way that we worked on songs, the way that a song got approached drum wise, that became my thing.
Yeah. But you've got like a loose style of playing. It's like a loose groove, but it feels very much like you're playing off of feeling rather than, I guess, making these split-second calculations on how you're going to play. And I don't know whether that's the best way to describe it. But if I listen to, I mean, a lot of this music I listen to is, really extreme, and the drummers are, play very, very fast and super technical. But I think the reason I've always preferred your drumming, and why I always see you as one of my favorite drummers, is that level of feel that you have in your music. You heard it. I saw Danzig live with you multiple times, and I said to everybody that was with me every single time, I was like, every time Johnny Kelly's with a band, somehow the band sounds better. And that's like the best compliment I could possibly give you.
Like like with typo, it wasn't really the kind of music where it would be like, where you could do something, drum wise all the time to make the drums really stand out. The drums, there was so much stuff going on in a typo song at almost all the time. You had to have something in the music that was the foundation for all that. So a lot of times the drums were kept pretty simple.
Yeah.
And you were trying to use the drums to create atmosphere for like, like whatever the music was portraying, whatever the lyrics were saying and stuff. You wanted the drums to enhance that, not to take over, or the drums weren't really a focal point in what typo negative was.
Yeah.
So understanding the role that they play in the song, you're trying to create an atmosphere. And that's a lot of times my tendency is to try to like smooth things over instead of making things sticky and staccato and stuff. It was always trying to be a smooth, solid foundation so that all those layers and stuff like that could go in, kind of like like Ringo Starr.
Yeah. Yeah.
Working with the Beatles, working on like Magical Mystery Tour and Sgt. Pepper's and stuff like that, where the drums were approached in such a unique way. It's not your standard contemporary pop music drumming. It's unique in its own way, and I ripped off a lot of it.
Okay, so what's the biggest thing that you ripped off as far as Ringo Starr is concerned?
There were a couple of times where I was like, I'll be shocked if we don't get sued for this. Like at the end of Pirate Blaze,
Yeah.
the song World Coming Down record. That record, a lot of that song is the drums were inspired. It was kind of like, it was like one of those things again, like what Typo always did, Black Sabbath meets the Beatles. The drums are very inspired by Strawberry Fields Forever. Like if you listen to the fills and stuff from the chorus,
yeah,
it's lifted right out of Strawberry Fields.
Yeah.
At the end of the song, boom, 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 boom.
Yeah. And I'm trying to kind of, in my mind, I'm trying to sort of play the two concurrently, because I've listened to both many times. But yeah, I
off that, and then we go right into the Sabbath type riff at the end of the song where there's the jamming and stuff like that, and that was something else. But it was like we try to like do these things and it'd be like, wow, this would be kind of cool, like whatever, try to go for this. What's the fill in Everyone I Love Is Dead, where the song stops and then there's just that the drum intro again going into the last chorus or whatever. It's Fairies Wear Boots.
Which again, ironically, that's the record I listened to last before we've started talking.
So a lot of this, the things that I was learning as we were going on in Typo Negative was that, like, you could do stuff with the drums that are heavy and it didn't necessarily have to be fast. It didn't have to be like this big, like, like a big crazy fill or something like that. It was always, you can have the same impact and create even more drama and effect, just doing quarter notes on a tom, or just doing doing triplets on it. And it would come across as something just as powerful, as opposed to, like, going crazy around the whole kit and stuff. And I liked that effect better.
Yeah.
There's some parts where it would, like, the drums had gotten a little busier and stuff, certain patterns and things like that, and it just, a lot of 9 out of 10 times it was what was to make the song better.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess that translates well to the Danzig drum lines as well. I mean, those that were there before, and obviously you worked on a couple of records as well. I've spoken to Glenn once, and I know he's a man, or I got to know him as a man who's got some very firm ideas on how things should and shouldn't be done. How much, I guess, how much of a stickler was he, or to giving you guidance on how he wanted you to drum those old songs live? Because again, I feel like, if I, as an outsider, I definitely feel like you had license to kind of put your own stamp on it. And I personally think those tracks all sounded 1,000 times better with you drumming live than they sound on record.
Thanks. I appreciate that. He's like, I guess, like, going in, I guess it was a two-part thing. He likes what I bring. He likes the feel that I have when I play, and he likes having that in his band. He likes the swing element that's there.
Yeah.
And the earlier stuff, like the way Chuck Biscuits plays, there's a lot of swing in what he did. So for the most part, I feel the most comfortable playing the stuff that Chuck played on. As far as, like, replicating it and stuff, I always felt that, regardless of who I was covering for, I pretty much made a career out of covering for other people. My post, even Typo, covering Typo.
Super substitute, I think, is what is the phrase.
And the first thing that you have to do, I would think, when you step into any band and you're playing something, and you're is to have respect for what it is you're playing. Danzig obviously has made a name for himself, and people, his fans expect a certain thing when they go to see him perform. Now, obviously, I'm not Chuck Biscuits or Joey or Bevan or any of the guys that played in the Misfits throughout the years, even when we played the Misfits songs. It's always been to try to have respect for what it is you're doing. So I try to hear the things that I think are like the hooks and the drum patterns and stuff like that. So you try to do the best job you can for the song to keep its integrity, instead of just having a creative license. Well, it's my band now. I'm the drummer in Danzig now. This is how we're going to play the drums.
Yeah.
This is what I think should be there. That's disrespectful to everyone. It's disrespectful to Glenn. It's disrespectful to the fans. So being that I won't be able to replicate everything, exactly note for note, and have the same exact feel, like where it's, if you close your eyes, you would swear that it's, the original drummer playing the track. It doesn't work that way. So I try to have respect for the song, but at the same time, I try not to lose my own identity for the way that I play. Obviously I'm in this position for a reason. There's something that I do that Glenn wants.
Yeah. He wants your kind of your signature on it.
Whatever band that I played with, like, they didn't, it wasn't like, before I joined Kill Devil Hill, it wasn't like, wow, the drummer from Typo and Danzig, he'd be perfect, for this band, because, like, the, Love You to Death is such a killer song, and it's just like everything Kill Devil Hill plays.
Yeah.
It's not like that. It's totally, there are actually different aspects of it.
Yeah.
But, like everything that you go into, like the same thing with Kill Devil Hill. I went in there and I replaced Vinny Appice. Vinny Appice's a fucking legend.
Yeah.
He was a big influence on me.
Yeah, yeah,
Which probably lends part of why I was able to come into the band and be a good fit.
yeah,
But I can't just go in there and say, all right, well, you know what? I don't like what Vinny did here. I don't like this. I think this, what I do, I think will be better. There are certain things that are expected. People hear songs a certain way. They expect it to be a certain way. It's not, 1971 anymore, where we can go in and just start doing improv and start playing the songs completely different, and everybody's, digging it.
yeah,
So it's I think the first thing, the first part for me would be to have respect for what it is you're playing.
yeah, yeah.
And if it's something that I'm comfortable with, even better, because then I can play it better, I can execute it better, because it's not, outside of my comfort zone.
Again, kind of keeping with Danzig, what is he like on tour? What is he like to work with? Because my experience of him is this: I've always been a big fan of his as well. I've probably been a fan of his for as long as I've been a fan of Typo. I remember back when I was still writing for music websites, I remember being at a press day once, and talking to a bunch of folks, and you get to exchanging stories. And one of the questions that was passed around was, who's the biggest dickhead you've ever interviewed? And to a person, almost everyone's like, "Oh, Glenn Danzig, I can't stand him. He stood up in the middle of one of my interviews and left." It's like,
you're not as
really,
drunk, you're not as
really,
bad.
like really, really running the guy down. And then I had an interview with him when Circle of Stakes came out, and I thought he was one of the most courteous, polite, nicest people I've ever spoken to. And we spoke for about an hour and a half. The next day, Regain Records actually gave me a call. He had asked them to call me and say thank you for the interview. I was like, Jesus Christ, it was like completely out of the blue. But I mean, I was on cloud nine after that.
I'm not going to dispel any myths. I think that it's important that his
mystique remains.
Yes, the mystique, it's very important. I think I find it important that it stays that way. It has to stay intact. There are certain things that need to be a mystique.
Yeah.
And he's managed to be one of those people.
That's true.
The guy goes to the store and it gets on the internet.
Yeah.
9 out of 10 people that go, more than 9 out of 10 people, even if they're like a remote celebrity or whatever, if they go to the store, it normally doesn't make the news.
Yeah.
So I admire that. So I a lot of people, they'll be like, "Oh, what's he like?" And I was like, I'm not. I said, him and I, we get along great. I love sending him Christmas cards and calling him on the holidays and stuff, and to make something normal.
Yeah. Well, it's like his girlfriend was sharing photos of him on Instagram wrapping presents the other day.
But I mean, he does regular things. He just does them in his own way.
Yeah. The thing is, what I took away from that conversation is I took away somebody who has quite, I think, traditional values, or at least a traditional outlook on life. And I think he has a very sort of traditional expectation of how people should behave. And I think the thing that gets his back up is rudeness. And that I can completely understand, because again, like I said to you, I really appreciated you giving me the time, because I bet that you get tons of these requests all the time, and I think unfortunately, some of them I could assume would be from some fairly entitled folk.
Well, sometimes it really it depends. This seems to be a unique situation, and I could totally understand why Glenn would spend an hour and a half with you.
Yeah.
That's you. That's on you.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
Some other guy going, "Hey, why do you wear black all the time, Glenn?" All right, this interview's over. Or whatever. Any of the other.
So tell me about that song "Mother" that you wrote. Yeah.
And, so if it's something that's if it's an interview that's stimulating and stuff like that, Glenn can be very chatty. So that's really on you. That's on who's ever interviewing them. If some coming in and they're coming in, thinking that Glenn's going to be a certain way and they have a certain combative nature, then he's going to put the horns on you, and you're going to get a shitty interview, and he's going to get up and walk out, and then the myth perpetuates.
Yeah.
The whole thing, the whole thing with the fun fest a few years ago, the thing in Texas, Like everybody, like I saw what was going on, and I saw like a lot of the stuff that was being said, and it was like, wow, you guys left out all the fucking important information.
That was the thing with Northside Kings, was it?
No, no, no. That was when he got hit.
Yeah.
The thing with Fun Fest was the thing with the chicken noodle soup.
Oh shit, I didn't even know about that.
Yeah, it was a big to do, and I mean, really, it was very simple. Like like a production. You do a show. There's a production runner. The runner picked him up from the airport while he was coming to the hotel. He was like, "I don't feel good. Can you get me some chicken soup and bring it back to the hotel?"
Yeah.
You know, many
which
times
which is a completely reasonable request.
Thing. And then they were talking about how he was refusing to go on stage, and then because it was an outdoor show in a public park or something like that. It's something they had a very strict curfew, and we went on late, and then they shut the power off, and then they were blaming it all on Glenn. We had played Fun Fest like 2 years prior, and it was not fun.
Yeah,
it was a total shit show.
Yeah.
And they had us on like this rinky dink, like mobile tractor trailer stage. And so like I remember Glenn calling me when they were confirming the show, and he's like, we got an offer for Fun Fest again. I was like, oh shit, really? I was like, are we doing it? Because it really was a shit show.
Yeah.
And he was like, no. He goes, they have us. They promised we're going to be direct support for Slayer, and we're going to be on the main stage. Now, the main stage is obviously the main stage. It's better lights, better sound system. It's just overall better.
Yeah.
We get to the Fun Fest. Our crew starts loading in, and they put us back on the rinky-dink stage again. Now, the production guys, our crew and stuff, had been advancing with their people, for weeks prior, like, getting light schematics and, sound system requirements, all this stuff. Everything is based on the premise of we're playing on the main stage with Slayer.
Yeah.
We pull up into the place and they throw us in the corner. Glenn gets to the venue. They pick him up. Glenn hadn't been there. They pick up Glenn, bring him to the venue. He sees what's going on. He's like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
He goes, this is not what we were told, but, get whoever did this in this room now. We need to talk.
Yeah.
And then they basically like, they were trying to push the issue saying, try to make us look bad, try to make him look bad about like, him going on late or refusing to go on. Meanwhile, they screwed him over right from the minute the truck pulled up.
Yeah. And I think this is something that a lot of people lose sight of. It's they will turn it around and go. I mean, I don't know what the promoter said, but I could imagine if you think about cases like this in the past, they'd turn around and they'd say, well, we're just so disappointed because he let out the fans and blah, blah, blah. It's like,
right. But ultimately, the band that looks bad.
Yeah, exactly. But the reality of it is there's a business agreement in place for a reason, number one. But number two, as a band, if you stand for that shit this year, then they're going to do exactly the same to you next year. And then
they'll do it to somebody else, or
exactly. But equally, I would assume in the music industry, your reputation precedes you as well. So you get to a point where suddenly it's not just one promoter doing it. Now it's 3 or 4. And that is a complete clusterfuck. On top of the fact that you've earned your stripes enough to where you could reasonably expect them to honor the details of an agreement.
Right. And a lot of it, for what it's worth, it's not rocket science. And it's pretty simple, basic stuff. Like, there's basic requirements. You agree to it. Just do it. Everybody does their job. You move on your way. Thank you. Yeah. Have a good night. Nice working with you. See you in 2 years.
Yeah. Which again is very reasonable. But I do think I always, when I see, news stories about, this person acted a certain way or concert was canceled because of this, I'm always dubious of it, because I've also seen behind the curtain. A very good friend of mine, Jeremy Wagner of Broken Hope. I saw him I saw him get screwed over royally by a promoter, put into a club where, frankly, it was like they were playing on a bunch of stacked up picnic tables.
Right.
And I just felt so bad for him because I was like, they're putting on one of the best shows I've seen a band of their style play, maybe my life. And there's about 50 people here to see this in this shit venue.
Yeah.
And I was like, if I were you, I would have told them to, I mean, I'm as a fan, I loved seeing you guys play. If I were you, I would have told the guy to fuck off. I would have packed up and I would have left.
There hasn't been too many times, like, where we've been a part of like canceled shows, like where it was like, like the situation was so bad that it could not be worked out, and the only option was to cancel the show. I
Yeah.
don't recall too many of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Which
been a-
would, which is fortunate, I guess. But I guess it also, you build up a degree of resilience after so many years on the road.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, there's a lot of shit that just doesn't phase you anymore. Like I try to like like with my kids getting older and stuff, now my kids are adults, and it's like now I've been sharing a little bit of the war stories and stuff like that, and I try to tell them, I'm like, I've lived in an alternate universe for 25 years. I was like, if you think you can shock me, it's impossible.
Yeah.
I've seen it. I've done it. I went to the show. I bought the shirt. I was like, it's the things that I could tell you would make your head spin. And I made it my point as a parent to hide you from that.
Yeah.
And even like, like when I'm at like family gatherings and stuff, like, and like, people be talking about like, something that was crazy or whatever. And I'm just like, man, the shit that I could tell you is like, you would be calling a priest for me.
How so your kids, are they a fan of Dad's music?
Safe to say, not really. I mean, they'll once in a while, like, like if they'll see like a video on TV, like, like sometimes like on MTV, they'll play the old metal videos and stuff.
Yeah.
If they see something like that, or if a song comes over the radio, like, my daughter will take a picture of the radio and send it to me or whatever, like that kind of stuff. But my daughter came to see me play for the first time, like the last time Danzig toured.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What did she have to say about your performance?
What did she say? At first, she was totally nervous. She did, like, all the times, like I would ask her, I was like, do you want to come? I want you to come to a show. She's like, I don't want to go. She's like, I don't want to get killed. I don't want to get trampled. It's like, what do you think goes on at my shows?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
like, it's not like that. So she came to a Danzig show in New Jersey, and she brought her friend, and her friend's parents actually knew like Zing.
Yeah.
And so like her and her friend, I was like, here, I brought her over to the front of house where the sound guy and the light guy are. There was like this little area and stuff. I was like, here, you can hang out with these guys. They'll make sure nothing happens to you. Everything will be fine, and I'll see you after the show. We're going on in like 10 minutes. I go back to the dressing room to get ready, and I get a text message. I need to use the bathroom. So I run back out. I grab her. I'm like, here's the bathroom. I was like, you have a pass. You can go anywhere you want here. You need to use the bathroom. You can go here. Don't worry about anything. So anyway, we do the show. And then because it was in New Jersey, I had a lot of friends there. And so all my friends were waiting, after the show. And it was like, people were leaving and stuff. And I went out to go get my daughter. And then I saw her with all my friends who she knows. So then she's like, oh, I hung out with them, this and that. And I was like, so what did you think? And she goes, it was different.
I was about to say, that's not the first thing that you want to hear. It's like, you make somebody you cook somebody dinner, like, what do you think of it?
It was food.
Haven't had anything like this before.
I hadn't eaten all day.
Yeah.
But so, yeah, that was her response. And then, then she saw like, everybody getting crazy after the show and stuff. Friends of mine, everybody was getting drunk and stuff. And I was like, this is what I've been dealing with for 30 years.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God.
So also, I might be misremembering this, but wasn't Kenny a guitarist on that tour?
Kenny did one tour with Danzig. That was in 06.
Yeah.
that was we had just gone to Danzig had just we went to Australia.
Okay.
We played a few shows in Australia, and after we got back, he let the bass player and the guitar player go, and that kind of left me. And so then the manager was like, "We need a guitar player and a bass player." And Glenn had told me that he called me, he told me what happened, what went down. He was like, "I'm going to have Zing play bass in Danzig." I was like, "Oh, that's cool." I was like, "Doesn't Zing play drums?" I was like, "I always knew him as a drummer."
I'm broadening his horizons.
I was like, "I didn't know he could play bass."
Yeah.
And so then the manager, Glenn's manager, was suggesting Kenny, and and so then Kenny agreed to do that tour. It was like 2 weeks. It was like, I don't know, maybe like a dozen shows or something like that.
Yeah.
And at the time, so now it was like, and Kenny was like, get me a set list. And I was like, I don't know the set list. I was like, we're probably not going to know the set list until like the show.
So you better start listening to some albums.
I mean, it wouldn't be the first time where we were driving to the first show and Glenn's writing out the set list.
Yeah.
And so like when we rehearse, we have to rehearse pretty much everything we play.
Yeah.
Like he'll give a heads up as far as like new material, like if we're playing new stuff from a new record.
Yeah.
He'll be like, we're probably going to add this A, B, and C into the set. So then at least we know that we have to work on these new songs, and then, as far as the rest of the catalog, it could be anybody's guess. It's like whatever he feels like, playing on that tour. So we had a new guitar player and a new bass player needing to get up to speed to learn about like 25 songs in like a week.
Yeah.
Thankfully, we were all in like New York area. Steve lived in New Jersey. Kenny and I both lived in Staten Island, and so we used Typo Negative's rehearsal space in Queens in Rockaway Beach, and we would get together. We got together like for a week. Got them up to speed on all these songs. It was like, I was like, honestly, I was like, I wish I could tell you what we were playing, but I don't know what we're playing. So you have to learn all the songs.
Be ready for anything.
Yeah. And then we were also, because on that particular tour, we were also doing Misfits and Sam Haines songs.
Yeah.
So we had to learn those too.
And there's a lot of Misfits songs to learn because they're all only about a minute long. Yeah.
So we learned we pulled it off. We got through everything, and there was about a half a dozen shows, along with one show in New Jersey where we played. It was we did it for a couple of years. We played the night after Christmas, and we play in New Jersey because I guess half the band was already there. And then Glenn would go home. Glenn would go back to New Jersey to visit family for the holiday.
Yeah.
And so while we were all together, it's like, let's book a show. And so then we did it for a couple of years. And it was actually, the shows were a lot of fun, and they were great.
Yeah.
And then Kenny did one of those, but that was it. After that, Kenny never played with the band again. Tommy came to the band. And since then, the lineup has been pretty stable.
Yeah. I mean, and Tommy is a very firm or steady hand as well. I mean, I love his guitar style anyway. I really like Prong. Cleansing was kind of an album that I got probably the same year, I think, as I got Bloody Kisses, and I've been a big fan of his, and I think he suits the band really well. But I think my point with Kenny was, from everything I've heard, and I've never met Kenny before, but he probably the best that your daughter didn't get to see him backstage.
Oh, he was there.
Oh, okay. So you're like, you might want to shield your eyes for the next half hour or so.
Yeah. And she grew up with Kenny. Kenny's been in her life since the day she was born.
So, I want to talk a bit about Typo Negative, and first question for me when you met those guys for the first time, what was that like? Because I think once you were in the band, and all the way through to Pete passing away, there you guys seemed to be like, I know there was, that you read all the stories about, dysfunction, arguments, blah, blah, blah. I felt like there was still somehow a very tight connection, a tight bond there. And certainly artistically, there was just an extraordinary chemistry between all of you. You know,
Yeah, it really was. Even though, of course, Peter is the focal point of what typo negative is, and
yeah,
it really, I really think that a lot of it had to do with it was the sum of its parts.
yeah,
If you took somebody out of the equation, it would have been completely different. I think the only person that was able to be replaced was me. Like the drummer. Like a drummer would have been able to, fit in like I did. I was able to come in, and it didn't really mess up the creative aspect of the band, I think. I couldn't see, I mean, obviously, like Peter, like that's, Peter, not just his singing and his singing, his bass playing was completely unique. And I never played with anybody like him up until that point, and I don't think I ever will.
yeah,
It was so unique, and it wasn't, it wasn't just your standard, like bass playing, which he could do. There are times in songs where he would, approach the song as a bass player, but
yeah,
it was
yeah,
he was orchestrating. He wasn't, playing bass.
yeah. How hard was that for you as a drummer to kind of keep with the bass? Because that's, obviously you kind of play along with the bass as
It was all it was a prime mover in a lot of the melodies. So it wasn't that hard. It was like it was a lot of it was the foundation melodically of what the song was about. So it was pretty easy to grab onto it, because I would go for the hang on, my computer's about to reboot. It was very easy to grab onto it because it was like the main root of the song.
yeah,
So like it had that identity to it, and it was able to grab onto that. And then there was like the other stuff around it was like, like the fluff and the color, and it wasn't really like the main root of the song. A lot of typo negatives music was bass driven,
yeah, yeah,
but it didn't really sound like a bass. It sounded like the keyboards that sounded like a guitar, and the guitar sounded like the keyboards. And it was, Peter's goal was to try to keep people guessing what was the bass, what was the guitars, and what was the keyboards. he,
yeah, yeah,
he wanted it to sound like one big mess.
yeah. I've always thought in my mind, Pete's bass sounded like Pete. There's no other way to describe it. It's like it didn't sound like a bass; it sounded like Pete. That was like, for me, almost that bass sound is almost synonymous with his voice. You couldn't imagine a type of
Yeah,
negative album without it.
to me, it was like, kind of like a combination of like John Entwistle, Paul McCartney, and Lemmy.
Yeah,
Because he did go for those, like, similar like tones that, like, Lemmy had, and he was playing more like, McCartney, or like John Entwistle. And then there were times where he would, play similar to Lemmy. We never really got into the discussion of it. I know that, like, like Geezer Butler was like one of his favorite bass players, and the same with John Entwistle and Paul McCartney. Those were like the three that I think that he was like, really most, influenced by. And then, whatever later on, with the Lemmy part, and with the heavy distortion on the bass, and a lot of high end, he used to like solder piezo's into his bass cabinets because he wanted that high end sizzle. So a lot of his tone wasn't really bass. It was, a lot of like mid range and high end,
yeah,
which always left you guessing, who's providing the low end to the band.
yeah, yeah. But again, I think with him as well, there was, especially live, you would see it. There was a real kind of, I know it was very, it's very carefully written and orchestrated, but there was a spontaneous feel to the way that he used to play, which I think would really
Yeah,
complement your drumming extremely
absolutely.
well.
And absolutely. And it was always fun to play with, because like, I mean, after playing with them for so long, you kind of knew, like what kind of headspace he was in, playing wise. But it was it was spontaneous, and he would he would come up with like these bass runs and stuff like that. He'd be like, well, that's fucking amazing. And it was fun to play with. And then, like other times, like a lot of times, like, when Peter wrote music, he didn't really think of like upbeats or like, like anything kind of like sudden or stuff like that. So like if he did something, he turned around, it's like, what was that?
Yeah.
It was like, well, we thought it'd be cool to put a stop here or like, whatever. And then he would work something out and it would work, and, to come up with it, and it would, he would work around that. And, but most of the time he was like, he wasn't really drum driven when he wrote music.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there was a lot of room for experimenting and stuff. And like when we were doing those records, we were doing them in Josh's house, and we were using samplers and stuff. And it was like, like we would do a track, we'd give them a drum track, and they would work the song out. And then it was like, it sounds, what they're doing sounds cool, but the drums suck behind it. The drums don't sound good. And then it was like, hearing what they were putting to it, then it would inspire us to like, to go in and change things out from under it.
Yeah.
So, like had we done like, analog recordings of stuff, we wouldn't have been able to do that. So we were able to fine tune the songs to cater to like those things, those other things that came up, out of nowhere or whatever. Be like, wow, that was really cool. We got to do something with that. And then we would, work out from under it, and then it would work. And then it would be, whatever, complete. And like, playing live, I always felt like we were like the world's ugliest wedding band. Yeah. Because a lot of times we would like, like clown around on stage, like, like playing covers and stuff. It was like, which is like what you did when you were 16 years old at the rehearsal studio with your buddies.
Yeah,
you play like half a song, half a Black Sabbath song, and all right, let's play this, And that's what it was for us in front of like, hundreds and thousands of people.
Yeah. But therein, in my view, there's magic in that, because I love those, like those Easter eggs when you play live. It's like there's very, very few frontmen, as an example, who can get away without interacting with the audience. I mean, Glenn is one of them. He does a little bit, but not a huge amount. But I love the audience interaction. I love those. I love when the band kind of goes off script, does their own thing, fucks around. Whether it's doing a very tongue-in-cheek cover, or whether it's doing something, doing a track in a different way. That to me is kind of the magic of the live experience.
We always wanted the live experience to be a live experience.
Yeah.
And it was, like for me, I always enjoyed playing. It wasn't one of those things where it felt like a chore or like a job or anything like that. It really, that's my happy place.
Yeah.
Behind my kit, it's what I love doing. So when I'm doing it live, or, like when we're performing, that's the fun. That's where, to me, that's where I'm supposed to have my fun.
Yeah.
I don't like our live show. There was never any anything like choreographed or anything like, like pretentious or stuff.
Yeah.
It wasn't, all right, we're going on stage, we have to get our game faces on now. There wasn't, there wasn't.
You do
like,
a little huddle backstage.
Yeah. Or there was like, like whatever, like, you had to put on your typo negative face to go out and perform and give people what they expected of typo negative. That was us. It was just, we were on stage or we weren't on stage. We were the same people all the time.
Yeah.
Whether we were out in the street, or we were in a restaurant, or in the movie theater, or like, buying groceries or performing, it was the same person all the time. And I think people grabbed onto that, and they saw that in the band. And I think that was probably one of the things that they found endearing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it was like, even though there was a certain look, Peter did have fangs.
Yeah.
But it was like, even though there was this certain look, like people could identify with these people. It was like,
yeah, because there was kind of there was a seriousness to the band, but there was always a wink as well. Like, we don't take ourselves very seriously,
No, you
and we
can't.
don't.
How can you take yourself seriously in this?
Yeah,
It you probably kill yourself trying. And if you do, you're full of shit. The only person that you're fooling is yourself.
yeah. That kind of obnoxious sense of humor, or that irreverent sense of humor, I think irreverence is the right word. I mean, that was something that the band was well known for. It's something that Pete was well known for. What do you think that he would make of the culture as it is right now? Where kind of people are
This
saying,
has come up as of late, and I think Peter was very lucky that he got out when he did.
yeah,
I don't think Peter was made for these times.
yeah.
He was very not in PC. He
Yeah.
was not a politically correct person.
No. And it was something I was pondering this morning, and part of what made me think about it is I recalled back to some stunt that he pulled on the website, and this might have been a couple of years before he passed away, but it was, I think, around the time that Dead Again came out. On the website, there was just suddenly a post with a gravestone, Pete Steele, free at last. And that was so typical of his sense of humor, and if you saw him on stage as well.
I remember getting phone calls from friends. Yo, what's going on? What happened? I was like, what are you talking about? Oh, the website, it says Peter died. I was like, what? It was like Paul McCartney.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it was. It was the goof like that, like the Beatles. Are you familiar with the whole story about Paul is dead?
And yes. So vaguely, but yes.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
I think it was Josh's idea, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. Well, Peter was not a computer internet savvy person.
Yeah.
But I think that came up of the two of them hanging out, like when they were working in the studio.
Yeah.
And then that happened. I honestly, I found out about it when everybody else did.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's that's what it was. It was always like the puns, or the references to stuff that we were influenced by.
Yeah.
And that was another one. I buried Paul.
Yeah. Are you surprised by how much love there still is for Typo Negative in 2021? Absolutely. Because I mean, even there's a lot of bands that have kind of were massive at one point in time, and have kind of, they've not fallen by the wayside. There's still a lot of people that hold them in very high regard, but I feel like of everybody's fans, Typo Negative fans have been the most fucking diehard and just embracing of the band, like it's still something new that's just come out.
It leaves me speechless. I have no explanation for it. Certain, like when you're going through life and you're just doing your thing, you're not really thinking about, what legacy am I going to leave behind? Or, most of the time it's just like, all right, whatever, we did this, now it's time to go, move on to the next thing. And you just keep on keeping on. And that's, being in Typo. I knew that there was something special about Typo Negative from the first time I heard the first note of the first song.
Yeah.
Years before I was in the band, when they first started playing, and it was, we all go back that far. Like I knew everybody in Typo Negative for years before I joined the band.
Yeah.
Kenny and I played in a band together, and then we used to make demos at Josh's house, and I used to do a lot of recording with other bands at Josh's house. All right, yeah. So like, and I met Sal when he was like 13 years old, and so I was friends with all these guys. And Peter, I knew Peter for years, through the studios and stuff. So I was friends with everyone before I even stepped foot in the band.
Yeah.
And but I knew it was something special the minute I heard, the first demos. I was like, this band's amazing. And it was Slow, Deep, and Hard was in my car constantly. Before it came out, when it came out, leading right up to when Bloody Kisses was released, it was one of my favorite records.
Yeah.
So when the position opened up, when Sal left the band and joined Life of Agony, I just called the guys up and I was like, hey, I don't know what you plan on doing, but if you plan on keeping the band going, I said, I want to come down for an audition.
Did they make you
And
audition?
yeah, I auditioned. Yeah. And Kenny and I would go to the studio to practice before my audition.
Yeah.
Because he wanted me in the band.
Yeah.
So needless, so I wound up having a good audition. I was in, I got the audition, and then I got kicked out of the band and then brought back into the band, because if, I was in the band, we played a little bit, didn't think it was going to work out. So they kicked me out, but then they brought me back in a day later. And, but I think that's part of the camaraderie, I guess, that you were referring to, where, yeah, there were a lot of disagreements and a lot of fights. No, I don't know what happened. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. I don't know what went on there, but it just froze up again.
I have no idea.
Coronavirus infecting the broadband infrastructure.
My wife has it right now, so I'm quarantining from her.
Oh, really? My daughter had it, and there's a few folks that work for me who've had it. But fortunately, I've given it a wide berth.
Yeah, my test came up negative.
Was that, sorry?
My test came up negative.
Oh, good. Yeah.
So,
No.
I have to quarantine for a few more days.
Yeah.
So,
but
I was saying that, to being in it and going about, being a band and being typo negative and, dealing with, with Peter's passing and stuff. And, now we're going into the 11th year. April, it'll be 11 years when Peter passed away, and people are still talking about the band. I never in my wildest imagination would have ever thought of that. I always felt that we were on the cusp of extinction after the bus dropped us off after every tour. We would always expect it. We were like, well, I guess that's it. Game over. Go back to get a job and get on with the rest of your life. Because there's no way that this can keep going.
When you mentioned right at the start of our conversation, you said, when Pete passed away, you were kind of faced with a sort of existential crisis, as in terms of what do you do next, and you seem to have really kind of, you seem to, for the most part, landed on your feet. What do you attribute that to? What got you through that time?
Initially I had no idea what was going to be ahead for me. I really didn't know. It was because most of my adult life was, being in typo negative.
Yeah.
And anything else that came along the way was like a perk or a little something, whatever, something to keep me busy or, a project, but it was always, you're typo negative. So when, Glenn Danzig had a really big show scheduled in Arizona, a big radio show. And at the time it was like 2 weeks after Peter had passed away. And Glenn had offered, he was like, he's like, if you want, whatever, we'll cancel the show. I totally understand, that kind of stuff. And I was like, you know what? I was like, it's 2 weeks later. Everything, the dust should have settled a little bit by then. Let's just keep it, as it is. It's a big show. It isn't just us canceling out. The ripple, the effect ripples.
Yeah.
Wide. So I was like, you know what? Just keep the show. Everything should be fine by then. There was a problem with getting Peter out of Pennsylvania into New York. And it wound up being held up for over a week. And so then his funeral was on the day that I was flying to California to go to rehearsal to do this show. And at this point, it was so close. It was like, I didn't think it would be, be fair to everybody involved and stuff to cancel the show. So I was like, just do it. So after the service, I went to the airport.
Yeah.
And so the show was the following day. So we went to Arizona, and it was kind of weird. I wasn't really sure. A lot of people are coming up to me, like saying, "Hey, I'm really sorry," like offering their condolences and stuff like that. And it was really awkward. And I didn't really, didn't know what to expect or anything like that. I wasn't, I had no expectations. I was just, I was just there, and kind of numb to a lot of things, but I was just there. But then, like we were about to go on stage, and the intro started, and we started playing the show. We started performing, we started playing, and I was like, at that moment, I was like, this is what I'm supposed to do. This is why I'm here.
Yeah.
This is me. And it was like, like Peter died. And as tragic and unfortunate that is, I can't die now. I didn't die. Am I supposed to, because Peter passed away, am I supposed to die with him? I didn't. I'm still here. And this is what I do. This is what makes me happy. This is, there's a lot of things that revolve around me. Playing drums. I was like, this is what I'm here to do. This is what I was meant to do. This is, so I'm going to keep doing it until I can't do it anymore.
Yeah.
And so that was like, that was kind of like, like one of those moments, like the game changer moment or whatever. And somehow I've managed, I don't know how, but there's a lot more hustling involved in it now than there used to be. There's a lot more juggling. Which I don't like. I don't like the hustle of it. I mean, it would have been great, because like we had gotten through so much with Peter, health-wise and stuff. It was like, Peter's going to be the next Lemmy. We're going to be the next Motorhead. We're just going to do this until we're old and, we can't move anymore. Because like we felt that, like at that point, we felt like, we had reached a certain plateau where we can always do this until our bodies give out.
Yeah.
And then a year later, like Peter's body gave out. But that's like, that's where we had gotten with it. And we were like, all right, this is us, this is who we are. This is what we do. And just keep doing it until we can't do it anymore. And then unfortunately Peter died, so we couldn't do it anymore. And then we had to, like you do a little bit of soul searching. It's like, who are you now? And that's kind of, that's what I'm still trying to figure out.
Well, I was going to ask you, as you approach early midlife, does that kind of hunger, does that appetite, is that still in you?
Yeah, because I'm still getting something from it. And it's like this, the music industry has always been a series of ultimate highs and the most tragic of lows. There's never any middle ground where you just coast along. It's like life it runs at 100 miles an hour and until you hit a wall. And then you have to fix the car, and then you're back at 100 miles an hour. There's never any cruising. You don't just cruise along. It's never like that. And I don't know. I guess it's just something that I've been doing it for so long. I'm just geared towards it. And that's the skin I'm comfortable in. Plus, I mean, now, later on in life, now it's like I'm taking more of an interest in like drumming.
Yeah.
Instead of being the drummer in a band and trying to be trying to make like a great song and stuff, I'm actually enjoying drums.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know if it's like a renaissance part of my life or, whatever, but I'm just enjoying it now. Like, I feel like I'm playing better now than I did, years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. And you teach lessons as well, do you not?
Yeah, which is also part of it too. I'm charging people money to learn how to play drums. I got to be able to do it. I need to be able to do it.
And are the lessons by invitation only, like mystical sensei, or could people get in touch with you?
Anyone that wants to take lessons or whatever, learn or whatever, get an understanding of my approach and how I did things in those bands and stuff, and then a lot of it's telling war stories and sharing experience along with some rudiments and paradiddles and stuff.
Have you had a few folks show up to interview, and the guy's got like one drumstick with him? It's like, so I was hoping we could just talk about type A negative.
A lot of my students consist of people who are like, fans or fans with children.
Yeah.
And then they have their children study with me, but that's for the most part,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, dude, I firstly, I just want to say it means so much to me that you did this interview, and it was so much fun catching up with you about these things, and
I appreciate it. This was a lot of fun. This was a cool interview.
Oh, dude, thank you very much. And as I said, I've got a very set idea in my mind about how I want my podcast to be, and I still, this will be episode 64 when it goes up. I still get such a thrill when you've done an episode, and it's like, that's exactly what I want, how I wanted that episode to go. Especially kind of if you take this free form approach to it, you never know how it's going to turn out. And sometimes you'll speak to somebody and you get to like 20 minutes in and you're not sure what's whether you're going to be able to extract something from him. But you are an extremely gracious and entertaining guest, and as I said, I appreciate the time.
Thank you. This was a lot of fun. You've raised the bar as far as interviews and podcasts go.
Awesome, dude. Thank you so much for your time. Take care of yourself, and we will speak again very soon.
Yes, man.
Bye-bye.
Like a Jew in ancient Spain, who for Christ's name did pay with pain. Modern day Inquisition. What is the link between these crafts? Doctors and thieves, they both wear masks, overpaid. Meet magicians. You're the creature.
Thank you so much to Johnny Kelly for coming on the show. What a great guy. What an absolute fucking legend, and what a legacy this guy has already left behind and continues to forge. The new Silvertomb record that he just did with Kenny Hickey is really, really good. Like I said I think I said it on the podcast, but I've said it for many years to friends of mine. Anytime this guy plays, particularly live with a band, that band always ends up sounding way better just because he's there. And to me, that's just about the biggest compliment I can give somebody. So just great having him on. What a fun conversation. And the song that you heard was Life Is Killing Me by Typo Negative. Many that I could choose from a phenomenal back catalogue. But that one in particular is very near and dear to my heart. Okay, let's move on now to Unsung Classics. I mentioned that I'm just going to get this segment kicked off, and I think how I'll do it is anytime there's been a relatively quiet week as far as new releases are concerned, I'll do one of these. So I'll dig up something good from the archives that I think maybe a couple of you have either overlooked or never heard of, or it would be worth you revisiting. The first inductee in my Unsung Classics segment is Sinister, and their album Cross the Sticks that came out in 1992. Sinister are a Dutch death metal band. They are still active, although in a very, very different guise to what they were back when they started. I think they only have one remaining member left. But if you followed the Death Metal Countdown special, you would have heard me talk at length about this. I really do firmly believe that part of the reason that these guys were so overlooked, particularly on those first 3 records that they brought out, was just because they weren't living in Florida at the time. This was pre-internet. This was when tape trading was still a thing, and when you had to order your music off a catalog, and if you, in my case, lived in South Africa, you had to wait 3 months for it to show up. I discovered these guys on the Death Is Just the Beginning Volume 3 compilation that Nuclear Blast put out, and they had a track on by these guys called Leviathan, which came off their second record, Diabolical Summoning. I heard it and I thought it was just about the most satanic and evil thing I'd ever come across in my entire life. Immediately got hold of Diabolical Summoning and Cross the Sticks, and I think about a year after I'd heard that, their third record, Hate, came out. The reality is all 3 of those records still hold up really well. I've chosen Cross the Sticks in particular because revisiting it again recently, as I've done quite a bit, it is incredible how kind of matured their sound already was when they got started. A lot of bands kind of have that, they either bring out a first record that's absolutely incredible, or they bring out a first record where you can hear that the kind of foundation is there, the building blocks are there, but everything hasn't quite locked in just yet. With these guys, it was definitely a case of being the former. There's definitely a tip of the hat to the Florida sound, but I feel like, this to me, probably tops out the vast majority of bands that were in the Tampa scene. And, no disrespect to the likes of Deicide or Obituary or Morbid Angel, but, I think these guys were on a par, if not better. And that's I know that would be heresy in some people's opinions, but I think if you go back and listen to particularly how good this record still sounds from a production perspective, from a performance perspective, I suspect you may potentially agree with me. And one performance to really shout out as well, Mike von Maastricht's vocals. Again, pointing back to the Leviathan video. He looked like a fucking caveman. He had these really crazy faces that he pulls, whilst he's doing his vocals, and you kind of get that feel from him on the record as well. It's a really punchy, brutal, aggressive, really kind of emotive performance. And the other thing that these guys did very, very well is they would chuck in just these little hints of like a almost black metalish type of melody, and they would use it particularly in breaks or over a groovy part, and it just worked very, very well. So I think all 3 of their first records are just absolutely phenomenal. In my view, again, like I said, on a par with the best that death metal has ever produced. It's a shame that things didn't turn out better for them, because I really do think that, like I said, had they been based in Florida, they would have been a lot bigger. But had they been had they come out at a different time, or at a time where people or where there was more of a global scene, because I don't really. I mean, things were really, really regional in the 90s, as most of you guys listening to this would know, and I feel nowadays that's very different with streaming media, etc. And I think if the regionality of the scene wasn't as strong then as wasn't as strong as maybe the global piece is now, then I think that they would have been a lot bigger and a lot more recognized. That being said, do yourself a favor and check out Cross the Sticks, Diabolical Summoning, and Hate. You will not be disappointed. And I will, for anyone doubting my recommendation, I give you Exhibit A. This is off Cross the Sticks, and this is a track called Sacramental Carnage. You just listened to Sacramental Carnage by Sinister off of 1992's Cross the Sticks. I don't actually think that you can stream this at the moment for some insane reason. I mean, you can't get it on Qobuz, and I can't see it on YouTube Music either, but there's a couple of uploads of it floating around on YouTube, so go check it out. I mean, God knows why, because this came out on Nuclear Blast, so fuck knows why it's not available, but you will be able to get it somewhere, or you can just do things the old-fashioned way and buy it. I think they sell like a double version of Cross the Sticks and Diabolical Summoning on one disc. I think both records are only about half an hour long anyway, so do yourself a favor and get that. And like I said, Hate is another album that you absolutely need to check out. Right, on that note, let's talk about some news. We start off with Metal Storm, and the first news item, Machine Head working on a new album. Machine Head recently shared a photo on Instagram that depicts the band members in the studio together working on what appears to be a new album. I hope that whatever it is that you do this week, that you will at some point spare a thought for Professor Rob Flynn and the doctors Tommy Lee, Sebastian Bach, Dee Snider and Paul Stanley, because now that Trump is out of office, I'm not sure how they're going to be able to get their faces on Blabbermouth every single day. That being said, I thought that Catharsis that came out in 2018 was an absolute load of shit. And as I've said before, I think that really the only Machine Head records worth a shit are the first two albums, both which are excellent. Beyond that, everything is total and utter muck. I mean, I'm astounded sometimes as to how this band has remained as popular as they have, because it feels to me like their popularity increases exponentially as the quality of their music dwanes, which may potentially be a comment on society generally, but anywho. Right, what else is going on that I can talk to you guys about? I know that there's a news story coming up very shortly about Panopticon, because I do some prep for this. Panopticon unveiled track from forthcoming album. We see a overweight young man there strolling through the woods. Panopticon are streaming a brand new track from their forthcoming album, and again Into the Light. The 12-minute epic piece called No Hope is the closing one of the 70-minute album. The latter will be available on Bind Rune Recordings during the spring-summer of 2021. I'm not the biggest fan of what I would call major chord black metal, so stuff like Death Heaven. A lot of Panopticon stuff hasn't really been my vibe, but I will admit that I did listen to this track, and I don't think it's half bad. I mean, I'm still not giddy with excitement about it, but I will definitely give it a listen, and who knows, I might end up liking it. But yeah, I just major chords, like anything that sounds remotely cheerful in black metal, I can't stand. The kind of folk influence that people think is so wonderful, and it's just not. It may be for some, but it's sure as fuck not for me. Memoriam releasing To the End album in March. Almost 2 years have passed since the release of A Requiem for Mankind. I'm not even going to bother reading that, but what I will say is, again, if you've followed the Death Metal Countdown, you will know that I'm a massive fan of Bolt Thrower. Obviously, Memoriam features Cole Willits of Bolt Thrower. I have not really, in all fairness, I've not really particularly enjoyed the... the last couple of Memoriam albums, or the last two Memoriam albums, and I can't really put my finger on why. It's just not. It's like everything has just not quite come together yet. Now, that being said, the great Rick Eaglestone shared on his Facebook this morning, I think the first single that's come off this track, which I believe is called Into Battle. I will be corrected on that, no doubt, but either way, it's called what I. Into Battle, I think, and I was very surprised by it. Very, very good. Like, really great sort of meaty riffs. I feel like Cole's vocals are sort of getting back to what they used to sound like, which is definitely not a bad thing. So I will definitely keep this on the radar and give it a listen. But like I said, they've yet to convince me, and it's not just because I'm a big Bolt Thrower mark, but I just think that. I said before about some bands will release a record where it sounds like some of the elements are there, the building blocks for something great is there, but they just haven't gotten everything together yet. I feel like Memoriam are that band. Moving on, again, whilst this fucking bucket of crap loads, I know that there's a Mork story coming up shortly. I'll talk about that in a second, but just to say, the Amenta, an Epoch Ellipsis single unveiled. I actually have the pre-release for this in my inbox, so I might listen to that later today. I had Tim Pope, obviously, from the Amenta on just before the Christmas break. Great guy. This band is fucking fantastic, and if ever there's a band whose probably entire back catalogue belongs in the Unsung Classics segment, it is these folk, and I really, really like what I hear from this new record. The album is called Revelator, out on Debum Morty. Debum Morty, hands down my favorite label at the moment. I'm really, really excited to hear what they've done with the rest of it, because they've retained some of the extremity here, but there's a lot of very different stuff they're doing as well. A lot more clean singing. I dare say some of it sounds a little bit more accessible, but there's still kind of that unhinged psychosis from the previous Amenta stuff on here. So looking forward to hearing what the whole thing sounds like. And I spoke with Kane, the vocalist. He's also going to come on as a guest at some point over the coming months. So I mentioned Mork. Mork has a new single available after unveiling full details of their forthcoming studio record, JKDrumLessons. Norwegian black metalers now present a brand new single, Arv, with accompanying official video. Thomas from Mork is a great dude who runs a very, very cool podcast where he has spoken to some absolute legends in the Norwegian black metal scene. I think the last one that he did was with Gall. I think the episode is nearly 3 hours long, so it is well worth listening to if you're a fan of Gall. It's probably Gall at like the most relaxed that I've heard him be. And Thomas is a super interesting guy. I exchanged a couple of messages with him on Instagram after I'd listened to that Gall episode and asked him whether he wanted to come on Into the Necrosphere. Naturally, he said yes, because real recognize real. Anyway, but yeah, so he says yes, sends me or responds back and said, I'd love to come on. Thanks for inviting me. Reach out to the PR person at my label. And immediately, as soon as I saw that name, I knew that it is extremely unlikely that he will ever come on Into the Necrosphere. The individual in question is somebody that I had worked with or attempted to work with previously when I was writing for Chronicles of Chaos. She is an absolute buffoon and a symptom of the incompetent half-wits that pollute the septic tank that is the London-based label scene. There's like this little cluster of them in Camden Town, and it's the same fucking morons that have been doing that. They seem to have kind of been job swapping across the same labels for the last 2 decades or more. And yeah, I mean, I don't want to sound like I'm whining or complaining here. This is just a statement of fact, and I just want to be as open with you guys as possible. So if you wonder why certain people aren't coming on the show, but you're seeing them on other channels, then now you know why. Because it's literally, I'm literally at a point now where certain people's names are put down as the contact for some of these guys. I would just rather not have them on the show. I could, the injury that it does to my blood pressure and my fucking IQ of having to deal with these people is not worth any any big name headline guest on an episode. This person, I've messaged her 3 times in the last 5 days, not a word of a response. She's also the same kind of person who, like the other individual I've mentioned to you guys before, that represents a certain larger label in the UK, knows that I'm running a podcast, knows what kind of show it is, and I've sent him multiple episodes for him to see, and yet still sends me emails. He'll send emails and go, the following bands are available for interview. Then I say, I'd like to meet this person, or I'd like to speak to this person. Okay, email me the questions, and I'll have them send you a response. What the fuck does he think I'm going to do? Sit here and talk to myself and go, so, Travis from Cattle Decapitation, tell me about veganism. Well, I decided to stop eating meat because Trump eats meat. So, it's. I'm being very facetious now. I don't know whether Travis is of the far left, but anyway, you guys get what I'm saying. Having to deal with people like this, it's just, I deal with enough stress and hassle in my day job that I'm not going to put up with this, and I would frankly rather have shows where literally I just do the news. And I do the news and I talk about music and I don't have guests on. Or I just speak to unsigned bands. So, I've also kind of wondered with some of the dealings I've had with them in reference to this podcast is, okay, maybe it's just a case of the podcast isn't big enough for them. But then I see guests popping up on other shows, and they've got 18 views on YouTube. They don't even have a Spotify or an Apple podcast presence. This show gets about 5,500 downloads a month now across all of the streaming platforms. And YouTube obviously is never going to be a particularly high figure, particularly because of the type of music that I deal with. But at the same time, there's still a hell of a lot more people paying attention to Into the Necrosphere than there is paying attention to some of the other podcasts where a lot of these bigger folks show up. So I don't know whether it's a case of maybe these people don't understand plain English. maybe I'm blacklisted and I don't know it, but either way, I've had my fill of having to engage with these fucking morons, and I kind of almost feel like calling them out publicly, because I don't really care what the consequences for that would be. I just think, there are great labels in the world, but I think when it comes to this UK scene and this cluster of simpletons that have been doing these jobs, and like I said, I'd call them the Camden Town crew, because all the offices are quite close to each other. It's fucking unreal. If I were in a band and any of these people were representing me, I'd basically just give up, because they'll do more damage to your career than anything else. Anyway, so what's up next? Aborum, Hostile record coming next month. Share tunes. Aborum's new music sounds boring to me. Italian industrialist Aborum, they used to be a interesting black kind of industrial project. They did an album called With No Human Intervention, which was pretty good, and they also did one called Generator that came out in 2006, which I thought was fucking brilliant. I think that had Bard Faust Aethun from he of former emperor and Norwegian prison fame drumming for them, but I listened to 2 minutes of the tracks that they've made available for Hostile, and it is fucking absolute dog shit. Diocletian. It is. I think it is Diocletian. Ink deal with Nuclear War Now Productions. You would think that for a band that I actually do quite like, I'd practice the pronunciation of their name before I talk about them. But I discovered this band last year on Mike Hill's, I think it was Everything Went Black, or his Metal Matters podcast. He has like a minute long track that plays as an intro and then one as an outro in either of those, which is why I do it. I mean, I'm more than happy to admit that I stole that idea from him. I just think it sets a cool tone and a cool atmosphere. And anyway, I really, really liked it. So I'm very excited about this. It follows up the 2019 album, Amongst the Flames of a Burning God. And man, much like Australia, there's a real serious movement in New Zealand right now. I don't know about any of you guys, but that Ulcerate record from last year, I still blast that thing at least 5 or 6 times a week. Diocletian is a phenomenal band as well. Good stuff happening in New Zealand. Good stuff happening in Australia also. Tribulation put out single and video for Funeral Pyre. Tribulation is one of those bands where, again, I just can't get why people like them so much. Or part of me does. Like, as musicians, they're great. The instrumental part of the band, I mean, like from a performance perspective, they're very, very good. But for me, it sounds like blackened metal with every semblance of anger, aggression, and rage just surgically removed. It sounds like black soy metal. And I know I refer to soy drinkers in a derogatory term. I mean, I don't mean to hate on Tribulation, because they are good at what they do, but it's just not for me. I need my music to be hateful, and Tribulation I don't think makes the cut in that regard. Let's have a quick gander at what's on Blabbermouth. I think the Blabbermouth stuff I might potentially park, because quite honestly, it's the same old shit over and over again. Fear Factory's Dino Cazares says his car was struck by a bullet earlier today. He lives in Los Angeles. What do you expect? They defunded the police in Los Angeles and in New York and Portland and all these other fucking dumps. And then the local government is stunned, apparently, by the fact that crime has gone up. Who would have thought? It says here, Fear Factory guitarist Dino Cazares says that his vehicle was struck by a bullet earlier today. The 54-year-old musician who lives in Los Angeles took to his Twitter this afternoon to share a photo of his car windshield with a bullet still stuck in the glass. He wrote the accompanying message, "Somebody realized that my fundraising scam for the last Fear Factory record was a ripoff and decided to take revenge." No, that's not what he wrote, but like I said, I actually wanted to visit New York in over this past Christmas. Obviously, things have changed there. Now those plans have changed. I'll never go there. No disrespect to anybody from those places that are listening, but whoever you guys have in charge, fucking Gavin Imbecile Newsom and Andrew Cuomo, those guys are responsible for those places, or for those once great cities turning just into absolute fucking hellholes, and it's a very, very sad thing. Okay, let's move on. Metallica is making glacial progress on new albums. You know that Lars has more money than he knows what to do with when his response to in an interview, like actually said it in like serious terms, like this is my ordinary vernacular, this is how I speak. He was asked about the progress of songwriting sessions for Metallica's follow-up to 2016's Hardwired to Self-Destruct LP. He responded, "It's been glacial." Like I said, Lars is Lars, and in my personal opinion, not the best drummer, but also not a guy who has shit to prove to anybody. If I was worth $180 million or whatever he's worth, I'd tell most people to suck it, and I'd probably never do another interview again. But yeah, glacial progress. I personally don't think that the new album is going to be any good. I didn't like Hardwired to Self-Destruct. I really fucking hate Death Magnetic. But that being said, I will still listen to the new album when it comes out. I'm not going to be a hypocrite and admit and pretend that I'm not going to. It's like one of those things. I don't know if I'm just a glutton for punishment, and I'm sure I'm not the same. I'm not the only one that feels like this. But there's always like something in the back of your mind that hopes, okay, maybe they get it right this time. It was the same for Slayer, and again after Divine Intervention in particular, they did nothing that was worth more than about 2 tracks after that. Moonspell drops new music video for All or Nothing. This modern rock Moonspell that has come out recently, I absolutely detest, and it's so sad because I was going through some of the stuff that I'd written for Chronicles of Chaos, actually, and deciding what I was going to do for my unsung classics. And Moonspell have had some incredible records. Memorial, The Antidote, like even stuff that doesn't kind of sit squarely in the purview of Wolfheart and Under the Moonspell, like the real vintage stuff. Is very, very good. And then this album, it's just absolutely, everything I've heard of it so far is abysmal. It's like they just decided, we've had enough of living off grade B beef or shopping at regular supermarkets. Time to break it into the big leagues. I don't think it's going to break into the big leagues for them. I think this is a very ill-fated experiment at trying to be more accessible. I think most bands really, need to stick to what they're good at. And I don't personally think that Moonspell is any good at this modern rock malarkey. Tomahawk to release first album in 8 years, Tonic Immobility, available in March. Tomahawk, the band featuring Dwayne Dennison of The Jesus Lizard, Trevor Dunn of Mr. Bungle, Mike Patton of Faith No More and Mr. Bungle, and John Stanier of Helmet, will release its first full-length album in 8 years, Tonic Immobility, via Ipecac Recordings. This is a pretty good track. I didn't like the previous Tomahawk record. In fact, I liked the first Tomahawk record a lot. And if you've not listened to that recently, go back and check out a track called "God Hates a Coward," and also listen to the track that's just before that. I think track 3. I can't even remember what it's called, but it's got some of the coolest lyrics, like just vintage Patton. They kind of lost their way, I think, a little bit, which is very often the case with Mike's work, because it becomes a little too self-indulgent. But it sounds to me like they've gotten it right on this one, so I will look forward to hearing that for sure. What else is there? One thing that I have to say, I was about to say, one thing I'm relieved about is that I don't have to see Donald Trump's name on every other music article, but leave it to old System of a Down Serge Tankian to buck the trend on that one. He says, and I quote, "I have never seen a president suck so much cock." You know what's funny? If John Schaefer from Iced Earth had said that about Joe Biden, Serge would be the first one to call him a bigot and a homophobe. I really do think that this guy is one of the most loathsome human beings on the face of the earth, along with the fucking crew of nitwits that I mentioned previously. Tommy Lee, Sebastian Bach, Dee Snider, Paul Stanley, those guys. I mean, they must be lost now because they can't give us their expert analysis on geopolitics and global finance any longer. I think if you guys listen to the interview that I did with Sam, you probably know my thoughts on the last election. I hope that things turn out well for America. I hope that Biden turns out to be a great president. I don't want to ramble on. I don't want to talk about politics too much. As a matter of fact, I want to not talk about politics at all after this. But like I said, I hope things turn out well. I just don't personally think that they're going to. And I don't think Trump's presidency was perfect either. There were certain things I agreed with, certain things I strongly disagreed with. I do think one thing that I do hope is if politics goes out of kind of mainstream non-news mainstream conversation, what I genuinely do hope is that at some point people are able to start getting some balance, some perspective again, and then things are not going to be as partisan as what they were. Even people that I deeply respect, you listen to them talk about it, or you try and have a sensible conversation or rational conversation with them about politics, and immediately that tribalism comes out, and it's like, I'm not friends with this person anymore because I found out that he's a Republican, or I don't speak to my mom because she's conservative. I mean, get a fucking grip. The world is, or actually not the world, life is too short for you to be denouncing people that have cared for you and that have been a friend and that have shown loyalty and shown love. I mean, Jesus Christ, a fucking parent who raised you and looked after you, paid your way for 20 years or 30 years or 40 years or whatever the case may be, over politics. It's just such a ludicrous thing to me. And again, I seriously think the reason why so many people think this way is because I don't think they've ever truly wrestled with their own mortality and realized that, at some point, depending on how old you are, not long from now, this is all going to come to an end. And then all this politics, all this bullshit, it's not going to mean a fucking thing. The only thing that will have meant anything are the people that you were close to while you were alive, the people that cared about you and the people that you cared about. That's the only thing that matters. So if you're going to let politics take that away, I can tell you right now, not Biden or Kamala Harris or Donald Trump will attend your funeral, but your mom would have attended your funeral. That friend that you told to fuck off because you heard they were conservative, they would probably have attended your funeral. Maybe they would have taken care of your loved ones in your absence. There's nothing more to say. I don't think you can. I mean, I think people are so far gone on this issue that you can't have an argument with them. I don't want to argue with them. You can't debate. You can't reason with them in any way. I guess it's. I want to borrow. As much as I don't like millennials, I'll borrow a millennial term and just say, "You do you." As for me, like I said, I know there's more important shit in life. Iron Maiden's Charlie Benante records guitar cover of Iron Maiden's Revelations. I really like the track Revelations. Even though I'm not the biggest Iron Maiden fan, I always liked that track. And old Benante didn't do a bad cover of this. I like some of his quarantine covers, as I've said. I hope that he continues to do them. I hope he continues to do them after the COVID is over. I don't know whether any of you guys saw, but the WHO just dropped a little nugget about 2 days ago, and I can't remember the exact verbiage of it, but effectively it says the PCR the numbers in the PCR testing that they've used as a standard previously have basically been out, and it's given them thousands of false positives, which in short means the numbers of people that are infected with the Rona has been overblown, which would explain why people experience such wildly different or have such wildly different experiences when they are pronounced COVID positive, and also weirdly enough would explain why cold and flu is down by a mysterious 98%. Again, I just hope that I don't even give a shit if it's a conspiracy. I just want all the lockdown nonsense to end. I want to be able to, get on a plane and go somewhere again. I want to be able to have a holiday, and I want to live life normally. All of this fucking mask wearing crap and all of the other stuff that's come with coronavirus, I've had enough of it. And speaking of which, I've had enough of this news malarkey. Which in turn means that it is time for me to sign off for the week. I hope that you guys enjoyed this episode. And, again, if you've made it all the way to here and you're new to the show, there is a treasure trove of great stuff in the back catalogue for you to check out. Interviews with Sam Bean of the Antichrist Imperium and Werewolves. That happened last week. John Jarvis of Scour. Evan Hopper of Quell. Tim Pope of the Amenta, Ghoul of Mayhem, Jason Mendonça from Akakaka, tons of people. So check that out. I can't believe that I've made it to 64 episodes, to be quite honest with you. And again, I will be very frank. I actually, probably around episode 25 or so, I was quite seriously considering packing it up, in part because I was so irritated with some of the record label baboons that I needed to deal with. But I have since then been thoroughly inspired, and again, quite frankly, all of the awesome messages and the support and just the fucking cool people that I've met doing the show make it worthwhile. Like I said, make it worthwhile enough that I would happily continue this, just be doing it by myself, talking shit every single week. Then have to deal with these morons and sour it for me. But I hope that you guys have enjoyed it. And once again, just thank you from the bottom of my heart for the support. It's not something I take lightly at all, and I really do work very hard to make sure that you guys get something entertaining, and hopefully it keeps you company in whatever it is you're doing. Whether you're driving around or working out or taking your walk if you're under lockdown rules. Hopefully it gives you something to smile about, something to think about, or maybe some cool tunes to go and check out. I'll be back next week. In the meantime, I'm wishing all of you bad motherfuckers a fond farewell.